Scripture today is from 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 29, and I'm going to read from the Anabaptist Community Bible. I received a tradition from the Lord, which I also handed on to you. On the night on which he was betrayed, the Lord Jesus took bread. After giving thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this to remember me." He did the same thing with the cup, and after they had eaten, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Every time you drink it, do this to remember me. Every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you broadcast the death of the Lord until he comes. This is why those who eat the bread or drink the cup of the Lord inappropriately will be guilty of the Lord's body and blood. Each individual should test himself or herself and eat from the bread and drink from the cup in that way. Those who eat and drink without correctly understanding the body are eating and drinking their own judgment."
You ended that one on a positive note there, Steve. Thank you. Oh. Shalom, Havarim. Hello, friends. Good to see you on this Labor Day weekend, the unofficial end to summer, as Steve mentioned earlier. Anybody here have any special plans? Are you going to eat together? Are you going to spend time together, picnic, stuff like that? Just the Mumbauer family will have some sort of celebration today, so we are all welcome to join. No. As we're thinking about these celebrations, we're thinking about these picnics, thinking about these events that bring us together, I realized that it would be appropriate today to begin with a few food puns or jokes or word plays. All right? We can handle that? Yeah. All right. I have a trinity for you. So if you don't like the first one, just wait because they get worse after that. All right, so as we know, many people will be gathering around tables today. We'll be sitting and spending time together. And not only do we enjoy these nice meals, you have your cookouts and stuff like that, but a lot of people will follow that up with some desserts, some rich desserts like cakes and pies. And do you know what the best thing you can put in a piece of pie is? Your teeth. I would also take credit for a fork. So, all right. I didn't mean to say a piece of pie. What's the best thing you could put in a pie? It would be your teeth. All right, I told you they're going to get worse. So how is it possible? So we'll be gathered around in homes, around tables, and I started thinking about tables as well, and there is a special kind of table. There is an edible table. Do you know what kind of table you can eat? A vegetable. A vegetable, yeah, all right, okay. You prefer the coffee? Ooh, you could drink the coffee table. Ooh. All right, Doris, don't show me up now, all right? All right, one last one. I was thinking about different kind of like nuts and legumes and stuff like that, and there's actually this one really picky kind of legume or nut. I'm not sure which it is, but this legume, this nut, it refuses to use like credit cards or debit cards or cash apps. It won't Venmo or send a check or anything like that. Do you know what kind of legume or nut refuses to use these forms of payment? The cashew. Where did that come from? Was that Howard? That was Will back there, the cashew. All right, the Connells are ruining my joke, stealing it from me. No, obviously, yes, today we are talking about food, we are talking about meals, and it just got me started thinking about the way that sometimes when you gather together with friends and family, people you really love and care about, that sometimes as you're sitting around those tables, I can get so annoyed by the way people eat. Yeah, you didn't expect me to go over that. Not thinking of anybody in particular, but there's just people that just eat wrong. Am I the only one that's noticed this? Okay. Well, now you will notice. Oh, you're pointing at somebody. Okay, I didn't see that. I'll be paying attention now. We know people that chew with their mouths open, or people that talk through the meal, and they just like, as they're eating, they continue to talk to you, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize we were having seafood for lunch today. You know, I kind of like, oh man, do we have to do that? There's people that just like are picky eaters. They just kind of pick at their food and they don't eat it, and it takes forever to finish the meal. So you're waiting around the table forever as this person finishes their food. And then there's the opposite side of people that just like mix their food together. They don't care, and they scarf it all down. There's people that can't have their food touching. Some people here are like, yeah, all right. Some people can't have their food touching. There's other people that, okay, real story. My cousin Stephen. I have a cousin named Stephen. I haven't seen him in 20-some years, but as I'm writing this up today, this past week, I thought of Stephen because the dude just eats weirdly. So he is one of 6 children, grew up in a big family, and Stephen is left-handed. And I remember sitting with him in high school at a table one time and realizing how weird it was the way he eats. So left-handed, he eats with his left hand. Imagine his plate is here on this podium. He sits forward with his right arm in front of his plate, leaning in front of his food, and shovels it in. Like, I haven't seen Stephen in over 20 years, and I still have these visions of Stephen like this. Buddy, it's okay. Nobody's going to take it from you. We have different ways of eating, and sometimes I'm just a little too sensitive, a little annoyed. Like, just finish the food and let's move on. Some people won't finish like the last cookie or the last piece of pie. Sonia's family, they will continue to divide the last piece of pie like ad nauseum, like continue like cutting it in half because you don't want to be the one to have the last piece of pie. Somebody in your family as well. Like, Kevin, do you want the last piece? We could split it. I'm like, there's nothing left. Just finish it. Like, it's okay. People approach food differently. And I've heard this story, I've probably shared this before, that there's 2 different kinds of people in this world. When you go to a party and you hear somebody announce, like, we're running low on pizza, there's 2 different people that react differently to that news. There are some people who will say, hey, we're running low on pizza, so I will just have 1 piece. And there's other people that say, hey, we're running low on pizza, so I'm going to get 3 pieces now quickly before they run out. We've known people like that. Well, today we're going to talk about food, so if you came hungry, I apologize. Because it's not going to fade from your mind, from your memory anytime soon. But we're going to be talking about a specific table and a specific meal. Obviously, today we are talking about this thing that's going on right here. And what do we call this again? This is... Okay, so I noticed like everybody in here said the word communion. What else could we call it? We call it the Eucharist. We call it the Lord's Supper. We can call it communion. And what we call it says a lot about what we believe takes place with this event, what is going on in this meal. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk through this list. We're going to use this as our outline. And we're going to talk about how some people really annoyed Paul in the way that they ate as well. So I'm not just alone. Paul, too, had a bit of a gripe list about how people ate. But it's not because they defended their food with their arm or because they chewed with their mouth open. It's because that they excluded other people from the table. So let's go ahead and start breaking this down, and we'll see just exactly what these words mean. Can you hear me all right in the back? All right. So we're going to follow this. So we're going to begin with which word? We'll start with the Eucharist. And you know that if you've been around, I like to break words down a little bit to better understand what they mean. So when people use the word Eucharist, it's not usually something we hear in the Mennonite church. It tends to be in more of a high church tradition. If you go to a church where the pastor or priest is up front wearing a robe, they maybe call it the Eucharist. And the word Eucharist, of course, comes from the card game euchre. A Eucharist is one who plays euchre. And some of you are like, I have no idea what euchre is. If you didn't come from Ohio or Pennsylvania, you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Doesn't matter. That was a joke, and it fell flat. Eucharist is actually a Greek word. It comes from the Greek word eucharisteo. And eucharisteo simply means thanksgiving. It is the Greek word for thanksgiving. And you can see there's another Greek word within that Greek word. That's why Greek words are so much fun. The word that's inside the Greek word is the Greek word charis. Who can help me out with charis? So I've used this one before. What does charis mean? I heard it over here somewhere. Charis means grace. So this is a grace. This is a gift. Someone has given you something that you did not earn, you did not deserve, and for that you are giving your thanks. So we find this actually in passages that describe the first communion table. As Jesus is meeting with his disciples in the upper room at the Last Supper, it says, after taking the cup, he gave thanks. And then later on it says, and he took the bread and he gave what? He gave thanks. Not a trick question. Anybody guess which word is used there in the Greek? Eucharisteo. Jesus is giving thanks. Now, I believe that there's at least two different ways that we can understand this. Like, for what is he giving thanks? What are we to be thankful for? When people celebrate the Eucharist, what are they drawing attention to? And the first thing that people might be giving thanks for is the Eucharist itself. That the Eucharist, that meal, that celebration, the bread and the cup, they are a gift. They are a form of grace. And this again comes mostly from some of the high church traditions that would see the Eucharist as a means of grace. Have you heard that phrase before? This is a means of grace. This is the way that God bestows God's grace upon us, is through the gift of the bread and the cup. If you want to receive God's grace, you must partake of the communion elements. Now, some people might be thinking, well, that sounds really weird. Where do you get that idea from? Like, God's grace only comes through these elements, through the bread, through the cup, through the drink, through the chewing of, like, bread, of body, whatever it is. Well, it's actually based on John's gospel. John 6, verses 53 through 54. Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up at the last day. So there's this idea within some Christian traditions that unless you actually take the bread and drink of the cup, you do not receive the grace of God. And this is why in some traditions it's a big deal when they withhold communion from someone. Yeah, I'll leave it there, that's fine. If you withhold communion from somebody, you're not simply saying that you don't think that they are living rightly. You are essentially keeping grace back from that person. And one example, I won't go there. So this is not exactly what we in the Mennonite Church have believed. We don't believe that the bread itself brings grace, that God can give you grace however God so chooses. The other way to look at it is that this is a symbol for something which we want to give thanks. This is symbolic of something. And what is it symbolic of? Well, Jesus says in Luke 22:20, this is my blood poured out for you. Now, wait a second. I think it says in the Bible that he used wine and they gave them bread. And I've actually tasted bread before. I don't know that I've ever tasted flesh. I haven't eaten a lot of flesh, just to be clear. I haven't really drank blood before. I have bit my tongue a time or two. So I'm not the only one, right? I know what blood tastes like. When I drink of the cup or eat the bread, it doesn't taste like that. No, we tend to say in the Mennonite Church that this is a symbol of something, a symbol of the body of Christ that was broken for us, a symbol of the blood that's been poured out for us. It symbolizes something else, and through that we are given grace, and for that we are giving thanks to God. That's my understanding of the Eucharist. All right, the second way that we could look at this event is to call it the Lord's Supper. You've heard this one as well? This was probably a little more common, and it focuses on the host of this meal. The host is, of course, it is Jesus. So as I'm thinking about different meals, different times that I've celebrated together with people and enjoyed the presence of people and enjoyed the experience with people, and I'm just thinking of some events now. I think of times when I've gathered with friends and family for like Friendsgiving. Some people here have joined me for Friendsgiving in the past. Friendsgiving is an event whenever you gather with friends and have Thanksgiving. Not complicated. And I remember a couple years ago, 10 years or so ago, back before we had family in the area, it was common for us on Thanksgiving to get together with friends and just sit around. You bring some food, you cook together, you share some stories, you maybe make a fire outside, you just take it easy. You watch a little football, you do what you want to do, you share this time together, and you eat together, you clean up together, and you make memories together. You take a few pictures, you snap a few selfies, and you look back on those pictures year after year, and you remember this event and where it took place and who all was there. It is a way to remember this special meal. And another event that I thought of this week was our wedding 22 years ago. So 22 years ago, Sonia and I gathered together with our friends and our family at a church, actually the same church that Kathy was born. Well, you weren't born at the church, but the church that Kathy attended as a child in Ohio. So yeah, just a weird connection. Like, we actually got married at the church that Kathy attended when she was a kid in Ohio. That's the way the Mennonite church works. So we had our wedding celebration at Sonnenberg Mennonite Church in the sanctuary, but we had our reception in a tent in the front yard because we are cheap, and that's the way to do it. You get the MCC relief sale tent, and you make a donation to MCC. They let you use the tent. Awesome. We gathered together in the church. We had our celebration. We had the reception outside, and like so many other people, we had cake at our reception. And of course, we had a really big cake because I have family members like Stephen's family where there's 6 kids. A lot of people come to this wedding. Got to have a big cake. So we had one of those big cakes with multiple tiers on it. Like, the wedding was so good, even the cake was in tears. Should have led with that one. All right. So we have this tiered cake, and of course they have to set that up before the ceremony. They bring it into the church front yard, and they set it up before the ceremony, then everybody goes into the church for the ceremony. And then, of course, the people who are volunteering that are helping to serve the cake, they come back out before everybody else gets out there, and they find a little surprise. In this tiered cake, there is what appears to be a dog print in the icing and some residual fur. They were wise enough to not tell us about this until well after the marriage ceremony. The people that were taking care of it, they were able to smooth out the icing. I think they picked out as much of the fur as they could. We didn't know about it. Well, I don't know. How long did they, like years later, they're telling us about this. Like why did nobody say there was a dog in your cake? Oh, it probably would have been a distraction for your wedding. Like, oh, all right. Well, we have the tiered cake, and of course, you start with a really big tier at the bottom, you have the next layer that keeps getting smaller, and you have that one at the top. And we took that top tier and we saved it back. We put that tier in our freezer, and 365 days later, we ate that. It tasted like dog hair and freezer burn, right? Like, why would you save that back? That's not fresh by any means. It wasn't like, oh, like, that sounds kind of weird, right? But why do you do that? I don't know, like, really, why did you do it? No, you do it to remember that event. It's a symbol of that day. It's remembering when all those friends and family members gathered together to celebrate this event. And when we talk about the Lord's Supper, this too is meant to be a memorial. And I know to call it a memorial, it sounds kind of grim and gruesome, like, oh, we had a memorial for Uncle Joe like 7 years ago to remember his death. No, like, this is a way to celebrate something. It's a good event. It's a way to remember what Jesus did for us, a way to remember this special event. Now, if you go into many churches, you'll see at the front of the church a table. And here at Stanton Mennonite Church, we had ours handmade by a local artisan. So it does not include this. But if you go to a local artisan, Glenn's friend made the table for us. If you go into many churches, they get like the mass-produced tables, and they often have something engraved in it, don't they? What does it say in the front of that table? Like, in remembrance. What? Like, why? Like, in remembrance of what? In remembrance of who? Like, oh, it says specifically, it's quoting from this passage from Luke. This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. When we talk about the Lord's Supper, when we describe this meal as the Lord's Supper, this is a way of remembering the host, what happened that day, what happened that time, that thing that occurred many years ago. We continue to celebrate it years and years later. Let's do one more. We're actually going to do two more. How about communion? This is probably the one that we're most familiar with. You just naturally kind of referred to it as communion. Steve used the language of communion. I did not prompt him one way or the other, which way to go with this. But again, like I like to break down these words. It's kind of fun to see what makes up these different words in our English language. And if you look at communion, you see the first 3-4 letters there. You get the Latin prefix com. And the Latin prefix com simply means to share something. So to share. And think of some other words that start with com. Think of some common words that start with com. What else can you think of? That's actually number 2 on my list. All right. We have common. It's something that's shared. Like if you and I have the same birthday, we have the same birthday in common. If we communicate, we are sharing language, we are sharing experiences, we're sharing this conversation back and forth. If we have community, we are sharing our time, we are sharing our goods, we're sharing food together. And you may notice if you look at communion and you look at community, those are very similar words. And they're very similar because in the Greek they are the exact same word. The word in Greek is koinonia. So in Latin, we get communion and community to kind of differentiate between these things. But in the Bible, the exact same word is used. When we celebrate communion, this is a way of celebrating us as a body, participating in an event. And you can't have communion by yourself. I'm not going to go home after church today and sit down with my Hawaiian sweet roll and juice box and sit down and finally get that straw in there and like, Kevin, this is the blood of Christ broken for me, you, for just for me. Like, no, like that's weird, right? You do this together. You need 2 or 3 people for communion. Wait, 2 or 3, that sounds like a familiar number. Someone else drew attention to 2 or 3. Like, what did Jesus say? Anytime you have 2 or 3 together, I'm there as well. So when we have communion, when we serve each other, the bread, the drink, it's not just us, it's not just me and KC over here, as cool as that would be just to hang out with you, but it's not just the 2 of us, it's also an event with me, KC, and JC. I didn't plan that, but it just happened. Boom. Jesus Christ, if you weren't figuring that out. Anytime 2 or 3 are gathered, Jesus is there as well. Communion isn't just about me. It's just not just about this event. It's about gathering together as the body of Christ and having this time to remember what Jesus did for us together as a union. So I am actually going to talk about the passage that Steve read for us. And in that passage, before we actually get to the event that he describes there as the first communion event that Jesus shared with his disciples, he starts by complaining about the way the disciples, the church in Corinth, he complains about the way they're doing communion. And I say it this way because I thought it was interesting. This is Paul's beef with the Corinthians. I use the word beef because it's food. And to say someone has beef, it means they have a complaint, yeah. Some things hit, some things miss, it's all good. Paul's got some complaints with it. He's got some grievances he wants to air with the Corinthians. They're doing this wrong, they're eating wrong, they're chewing with their mouth open. No, what is it that they're doing wrong? He says, when they come together and they celebrate the Lord's communion, the Lord's supper, he says, some of you go ahead you go ahead with your own private suppers. People are breaking out with their friends, like they're sitting over here in this clique. They're hanging out with this group and eating together, and other people are sitting with their group and they're eating together, and some people are feeling excluded. It's like the table at lunchtime in middle school all over again. You don't get to sit with the cool kids. We have our own little table here and another table over there. And Paul goes on with more beef. He says, whenever you do get together, one person remains hungry and another person gets drunk. There's people that are eating and drinking in excess while others have nothing or very little to eat or drink. And he gives one more complaint. He says, And those with much, they're humiliating those with little. Because everybody's looking around, they see this one group that have all the food and all the fun and all the drink, and the other people are feeling like left out. They're eating a few crumbs on the side. They're being humiliated. They're being mocked because everybody knows they don't have as much as everybody else. And Paul says in this, when you do this, when you start separating out, when you're eating with the cool kids or the goths or the jocks or whatever it might be, separating out into different groups, not sharing equally, when you do this, this doesn't count as the Lord's Supper. So that when you come together, it is not the Lord's Supper you are eating. When we divide up like this, when we break apart, when we sit based on class or social structure or status, we're not celebrating the Lord's Supper. Oh, you might be eating well, you might be drinking your fill, but that's not what Christ had described. It's not what Christ had declared that we should do in remembrance of him. So we jump ahead to the end of that passage, the part that Steve read for us and I laughed a little bit about. And Paul says this. He talks about eating and drinking in an unworthy manner. And we probably all have experiences with this. There's times that we can remember the church denying people communion, withholding communion from people, because to do so, to eat that bread or to drink that cup would be to do so in an unworthy manner. And you think about the things that people were withheld communion for. Anybody want to yell out, like, what comes to mind? You bought a new car with a shiny bumper. Sorry, you can't have communion today. Or maybe a woman cut her hair, it's too short. She can't have communion today. Or she wore pants that day instead of a dress. Sorry, you can't eat the Lord's Supper. I mock some of these things, but there were other things like divorce. Sometimes divorced people were denied communion. People that had children outside of marriage sometimes were denied communion. And I think when I read this passage, and I read it all in context, like we're actually doing a huge disservice to what Paul was saying here. We're doing the opposite of what Paul was calling the church to do. Because we're picking and choosing things that we are against and saying that you do not get to participate in this meal. But Paul's saying the opposite of this. He's saying by excluding people, you don't get to participate in this meal. Think about who Jesus shared his table with. Around that table was the guy that was about to betray him, to turn him over to the Roman authorities. Sitting at that table was Peter, who was about to deny him. James and John were there. They wanted to bring like genocide to the Samaritans, like call down fire from heaven, destroy these people. That would be easier than loving them. And yet Jesus shared the table with them. Paul is saying, when we do these things and exclude other people, when we disinvite them from the Lord's table, not your table, from Jesus' meal, you're doing so in an unworthy manner. So let's cheer things up just a little bit. I was reminded recently of a movie that came out in 2002. And it's a real serious movie, very intentional and heart-wrenching movie called Lilo and Stitch. I'm reminded of this movie because I guess there was a recent live-action version of this that was released. Yeah? Okay. I did not see the live-action version because I'm a 45-year-old man, and and I didn't. No judgment on anybody that did, but I did see the one that came out 23 years ago. Lilo and Stitch. You've seen this one before? You're familiar with it a little bit? It takes place in Hawaii. There's a young adult woman who is raising her sister on their own. And of course, they've got problems. They're human beings. They've got challenges. There's financial problems. There's social problems. She's trying to find her way in the world with work, with love life, and raise her daughter as well. Her sister. The sister's name is Lilo. And there's also an alien invasion that takes place, and aliens come to the world. And if you're going to invade the world, you're going to go to a beautiful place, right? So you end up in Hawaii. This alien is avoiding, it's a Disney movie, just to be clear, it's not a documentary, it didn't really happen. This alien is avoiding some other aliens who are chasing after him, so he hides as a dog. He covers his antenna, he does a few things to make himself look a little more dog-like, but you can see he doesn't quite fit in. He is blue, he is ugly, he is not well behaved, but yet Lilo adopts him as her dog. And throughout this movie, the sister and Lilo, they continue to have these challenges, but they also continue to stand together, to be together for one another. And they use this Hawaiian word frequently throughout the movie. Does anybody remember the word? The word is Ohana. And they continue to use this anytime this family feels this tension, anytime they feel torn apart. They use the word Ohana, and they describe it as this. They say Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. So in the end, when the alien is finally discovered, and they're trying to take him away, Lilo is, of course, in tears. She's crying, and the alien turns out that he could speak the whole time. And he approaches them, and he says, no, don't worry. We are Ohana. Ohana means family. And family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. They're not blood family, but there's something deeper than that. They are family to one another, even though they're outcasts, even though they're weirdos, even though they're different, even though much of society has turned their back on them, they are family to one another. And family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. So I come back to these words that we've been using to describe this meal. The Eucharist is a way of giving thanks. That's a good thing. We give thanks to Jesus for what he did. We celebrate the Lord's Supper. We remember what took place and who threw this party originally. We have communion. We celebrate this together. And what else would I add to this group? I think we could call it Ohana. This is about family. We are family together. Maybe not by blood, maybe not by relation, but by choice. We come together. And family means no one is left behind. No one is forgotten. Paul's critique is that certain people were left behind. Certain people were forgotten. They were excluded. And in doing that, they were not celebrating the Lord's Supper. But today I want to invite you as my family to join me in this meal, to celebrate together the Lord's Supper. So I'm going to invite people to come forward. I'm going to have Sandy's going to come up and provide some background music for us. Steve's going to help serve, and Hadley as well. Whenever you come forward, I want you to take from the juice. Steve will be holding this. And take it back with you to your seats. Take of the juice and tear off a piece of the bread. We'll take them back to our seats, and we'll partake of these elements together at the same time, simultaneously. There's little spots in the back of your pews where you can put the cups and leave those there, and I'll make my kids pick it up afterwards. If you're young, if you're not sure about all this and you just want some grapes today, this is normally available for the children. Adults, you're welcome to some grapes as well. Be aware, again, they do have some seeds, but they have been washed and they are ready. So I remind you that on the night when Jesus was betrayed, he was handed over to the authorities to be crucified, to die. He gathered with his disciples in the upper room, and he took the bread before the meal, and he blessed it, and he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples. He said, "This is my body broken for you. Eat of this in remembrance of me." And after the meal, he took the cup, and he blessed it. He says, "This is the blood of the new covenant poured out for you. Drink of it in remembrance of me." So I invite Steve and Hadley to come up to grab some elements with me. If there's anybody that needs gluten-free, we have gluten-free options as well.